This is how I would lose 8 kilos in 8 weeks all over again if I couldn't exercise, because I have lived it. I have gone through periods of my life where I've dealt with immense back pain. I have been stuck in bed, unable to do the move more component of the eat less and move more equation. And as someone who has had to deal with relentless weight gain that piled on no matter how much cardio I did, you can see why I had to finally figure out how to change other aspects of my life and figure out how to lose body fat without making my pain even worse by training harder or eating less and really limiting my nutrition to a point where it makes recovery feel impossible. So, how did I lose 8 kilos in 8 weeks while being bedbound? Well, in this video, I am breaking down what insulin really does in your body and why it is the key to fat loss, how I lost the weight with almost zero movement, and including my diet approach and other methods that I included to pull the right fat loss levers without counting a single calorie. And by the end of this, you're going to understand way more about fat loss than the average person and even some personal trainers. So let's get into it. Firstly, a little bit of story time. I won't take long, I promise. A while ago, I fell off of a horse. Now, I am a horse rider, so falls are just part of the hobby, basically. But this one was a really bad fall. I popped the horse into canter and he started bucking and I hit the ground really hard. I couldn't walk properly for a while. This meant no gym, no activity. I was basically unable to do much more than about a 10-minute walk at a time. That was it. But somehow during this 2-month recovery period, I still managed to lose 8 kilos. Now, my previous dieting approach sort of revolved around some dieting, tracking calories, hit training, if it fits your macros. None of it really worked. So the only change here that I did was actually understanding insulin. What I did was I had to shift from the calories mindset to the hormones mindset. And it's important to note that only about 5 to 10% of your fat burning actually comes from exercise. And the rest is kind of down to your diet as well as your general movement outside of the gym and just keeping your body alive. So think like the energy that it takes to power your brain or to keep your heart pumping or to keep your lungs breathing. And if your movement is limited here, then pulling the right levers is key. So this leads me to my first point, which is insulin. So, insulin is a hormone that is released by your pancreas while eating. I have done plenty of other videos on the mechanism of insulin, so I won't dive too deeply into it here. But basically, what you need to know is that insulin's job is to store energy or allow your body to access that energy. Now, it wants to store energy in your muscles, in your liver, and also in your fat storage, which is basically the overflow of that energy. So, the key concept here that you need to understand is that higher insulin is going to keep you in fat storage mode, whereas low insulin is going to allow your body to then access that fat storage for burning for energy. The important nuance here is that the body will prioritize managing blood glucose first. So, if you have got frequent spikes by eating regularly throughout the day, that means that your body has less access to its stored body fat that it's only going to be using in a deficit. You really have to think of your body fat as extra energy stored for later. And why would your body start using the backup supplies if you keep giving it new energy in the form of food? Insulin is mostly going to be increased by carbs and sugar, while fats and proteins have barely, if not any, impact on insulin. The key takeaway here is that it's not just about calories, it's the signals that those calories send to your body and the hormones that they impact. So, insulin is a hormone. The goal here is that you want more time with your insulin hormone to be lowered in order for your body to access the stored fats by avoiding the types of food that are going to be sending the signals to your insulin hormone to say spike. Now, for the meaty part, pun intended, this is the exact approach I take to fat loss in my high touch coaching, which I call the metabolic method to dieting, pulling the right levers to lose weight without counting calories. We pull levers to impact insulin and other hormones instead of counting the food that we're eating because we aren't robots. So, step one is going to be to reduce insulin and also inflammation triggers. So, this is things like your refined carbs, your breads, your pastas, your Pop Tarts, ultra processed foods, chocolates, anything that's been made by a human that is carb based. So, then we have also got sugar. And I just want to quickly mention that when I lost this 8 kilos in 8 weeks, I basically cut out sugar completely. And I noticed when I added sugar back into my diet that it was a massive trigger for my inflammation. And I realized that by having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I'm really prone to feeling the impacts of sugar. So that was great for me to almost do like an elimination diet. I almost went like full carnivore during this time just to try it out. I found that after a while, my body stopped hurting with the less sugar that I ate, which was really crazy without any form of medication. So, step two is going to be to focus on your protein. So, this is going to be preserving your muscle, especially during a cut. It's also going to be supporting your metabolism and healthy hormones. So, what we want is more muscle, which means more glucose management. So, now these days, I can handle a lot more carbs than I used to purely because my muscle mass is way higher than it was. And it's more demanding of quick energy, which I can give my body in the form of carbs. And instead of going straight to fat storage like it used to, it's actually getting used to fill up all of my muscles, which is fantastic. Now, the next one is fats. And we want fats while we're in a deficit and not counting calories because of satiety. It is so much easier to lose weight when you're not hungry. This is why Ozempic works so well. We also want fats for stable energy. This is slow release energy, and a lot of people don't really think of fat as an energy source. But I think of fat as like a giant log of slow burning energy that's going to last all day, whereas carbs are like the kindling, the quick burn energy on top that you often see when people are runners. Like they have to take those little packs of they're like sugar, basically like just drinking sugar. Or like they'll take lollies on their run for quick carbs, but fats are long-term energy that you can have throughout the day. So really great if you are like me and you go into an office and you just want to not have that like 3 p.m. energy crash and you're not, like an athlete that is going to need a higher level of carbs. We also want to not overdo our fats because we have to remember that there are 9 calories per gram of fat, whereas there are 4 calories per gram of protein or carbs. So have a look at your plate and just consider the fat as well that is already in your protein source, and then add a little bit on the side. So, for example, if I have a piece of ribeye steak, I will add maybe like a quarter avocado with some feta to my meal because I understand that the steak already has got a decent portion of healthy fats in it. And you're going to be balancing your meal with protein, but understanding that most natural sources of protein also contain fat. So think about it like eggs, beef, lamb, fish, and even certain cuts of chicken are fattier than others, like thighs. And I also think that while you are going through and sort of cleaning up your diet, it's really important to figure out what your triggers are, especially if you're like me and you are unable to exercise because of chronic pain. Once I figured out what was causing my pain, I was able to treat it. And that was a mixture of day surgery, as well as medication, but nutrition as well. So, not to get into too much detail, but I get yearly treatments for my pain. And at some point in my life, I'm going to need a fusion. But for now, the ongoing management is medication and lowering the inflammation that comes out of my diet. And like I said before, sugar really flares me up. Some other foods will flare other people up. My best friend gets like really awful stomach cramps from eating avocado, and she'll also bloat from eating broccoli. So, if you figure out what foods are triggering negative reactions in your body by doing like almost like an elimination diet, go a bit like keto, really rely on meats, whole foods, whole food sources of carbs as well. Like you can keep in potatoes, just like remove the Pop Tarts and include good sources of fats so that you're not starving all the time. So, what this might look like for me, I'm just trying to think back to what I was basically eating in a day. I would wake up, I'd have like a nice omelet with a healthy serving of butter in there. I'd add some milk or cream into the eggs. I'd have that maybe with a side of like a bulletproof coffee. And I'd maybe have like 3 to 4 eggs in that omelet. Then later in the day, I would have my lunch, which would probably be some kind of maybe like a meat patty with a layer of like cheese on top and some kind of side of vegetables. And then for dinner, probably would be like a steak, a bit of sweet potato, and some vegetables. And I would have my sweet potato before I go to bed or right before gym, either for quick burning energy or for a little bit of glucose a few hours before I go to sleep. Because having a little bit of glucose in your system a few hours before bed can help with getting into a nice, deeper, restorative sleep because you're not having like a crash through the night that's going to keep like wake you up. The other thing that I started doing a lot of during this time period was fasting, and I experimented with all different types of fasting lengths. Fasting, I think, is really something that you have to figure out the right length for yourself. It's not really something that someone else can say, "Oh, I think you should do 16/8." Although 16/8 is definitely the like easiest option here. Basically, fasting is going to be the simplest tool for lowering insulin because no food means no insulin spike whatsoever. My favorite approach to fasting is condensing my day into 2 meals. I do a brunch and an early dinner, which I call a linner. So this is no late night eating either. It's no eating when I get home. Basically, I'll take my, my omelet or whatever it is into work, have that, and then at about 4:30, I will then have my second meal, which will be my dinner, and then I will go to the gym. And I will make sure that both of those 2 meals contain enough nutrients for my whole day, understanding that I am going to be in a deficit during this time as well. And then I'm going to hit the gym because I go to the gym after work. And then when I get home, I'm probably just going to eat like a sugar-free beverage or like some tea, and then I'm just gonna go to bed because by the time I get home from the gym, it's usually like 8 o'clock and I just want to shower and go to bed. This is great for me mentally as well because I only have to think about 2 meals for the day and it makes meal prepping much easier. I just go prep my breakfast and my dinner for the week, and I don't really have to think about snacks or anything outside of that. What I'm doing is I'm limiting the spikes during the day. I'm just having two, and I'm making sure to include enough healthy fats and proteins to get me from meal to meal without spiking my glucose too much. Once it drops, it's going to cause me to become ravenously hungry and really crave sugary things and chocolate. If I've got enough protein and fat, I can sustain all throughout the day and not get any crashes and not end up craving foods. I'm also going to be adding in things like fruit into each of those meals rather than having them separate. I basically don't have any carbs on their own. I will always have a carb source with some kind of fat or protein. So even if I maybe want some berries, maybe I get home and I realize, oh shit, I haven't had any fruit today. I'll have some berries, but I'll also chuck some dollop cream on it. That way it's also like a bit of ice cream, but the cream will really dull that insulin spike and add a little bit more fats into your day. And then that's going to be sustaining your energy and making you feel fuller for longer. I also mentioned earlier that I was experimenting with a number of different fasts. So I was trying even some 36-hour fasts. Autophagy, which is cellular healing, is going to be kicking in around 16 hours. I really wanted to do some longer fasts during this time to get the autophagy because I was bedbound because I had had an injury. And so for me, any way that I could heal that injury, the better. So what I would usually advise is to start with, 12 to 14 hours, build up gradually, and then try and drop down to just your 2 meals a day. If you have to have snacks, then just make them like a protein and fat based snack rather than a carb based one, just to keep your insulin low. Make sure to include plenty of healthy vegetables and fruits and really healthy sources of proteins and fats from natural ingredients. The next one is going to be sleep. So we want the fat burning and the repair that happens during sleep. There was a study done on sleep and fat loss, and if I can find the study, I will link it below. Scientists put 2 groups of people together on the same diet and the same deficit, and the only difference was that one group got far less sleep than the other. The group with more sleep preserved more muscle mass and lost more fat than the group who had less sleep, and the group who had less sleep lost almost equal parts muscle and fat. And the last thing that we want when we're not able to move more or resistance train is muscle loss. So let's also quickly touch on the relationship between melatonin and insulin. So when you have got high insulin, it's going to create poor sleep, whereas low insulin is going to create better sleep because of how insulin interacts with melatonin. They're sort of on a seesaw, so only one can be high while the other one is low. So if you want your melatonin to be up, your insulin needs to be lower. So the way that you do this is you just stop eating earlier, which is why I love my Linner. So I can have my Linner right before I go and I work out. So I'll have my carb source. I'll go and use that energy at the gym, but I'll have healthy fats in there. That will sustain me and I won't be hungry by the time I get home. This is going to be improving that overnight fat burning window as well. If you stop eating around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you go to bed at 9, at least having that 3 hours where you're not eating anything is enough time for your melatonin to actually rise because your insulin needs a couple hours to come down. So throughout this time, sleep was basically my exercise and also my repair engine to help me recover. So now we've covered off insulin and its role in the body, the diet approach I would take to lose 8 kilos all over again, fasting, and the impact of sleep. And if you're still hungry for some more information, then just check out the free webinar that I've got linked below. It is on the top fat loss mistakes that you are likely making right now, as well as how to fix them. And if you would like my help on your weight loss and health journey, then check out my website for my coaching in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video and you've been diagnosed with PCOS and you're feeling a bit stuck, then you'll love this video I did on why weight loss is so tough for women with PCOS and how to finally flip the fat loss switch and work with your hormones instead of against them. So that is all for today. And let me know if you prefer this more relaxed way of presenting. I'm trying to make these videos a bit more conversational and maybe a bit less polished. Someone commented asking if I was AI. So I thought maybe I come across a bit too monotone. Who knows? Let me know. And if you've even gotten this far, but I will see you in the next one.